Tonight on CBC Vancouver News.
What we are announcing today ensures that people who need hospital care get it.
The province ramps up resources to treat more patients amid flu and COVID.
It feels like it's dropping masks by the wayside.
But some doctors say it's time to bring back more precautions.
We understand that this can be quite scary for youth.
Police in Metro Vancouver warn about a rise in sexual extortion reports, what children and guardians can do to protect themselves.
It's a curveball for sure.
And a pigeon as a drug mule? You may not believe what guards found in a BC prison yard.
This is CBC Vancouver News.
Good evening, I'm Dan Burritt. Thanks for joining us. Anita is on assignment tonight. The BC government is rushing to make more room in our hospitals across the province as it deals with a flood of patients. It comes as COVID, flu, and other illnesses hit more people. But as Joel Ballard reports, some medical experts say leaders need to focus more on prevention, and that includes masks.
BC has been coping with unprecedented demand on its healthcare system. More than 10,000 patients are in hospital right now.
What we are announcing today ensures that people who need hospital care get it.
The province is reactivating what it calls emergency operations centers. Essentially, more resources for hospitals to manage patients, all to help handle an expected surge in flu, respiratory illness, and COVID cases.
There'll be a daily focus on ensuring that there's adequate space to welcome new patients into the hospital.
But some medical experts say the province needs to focus on prevention as well.
Right now we're acting as let's wait and see, so always 2 or 3 steps behind.
She wants officials to be more proactive.
If you took a precautionary principle, you would say let's bring back mask requirements or mandates, at least in essential services area indoors. And that includes schools, that include public transit, grocery stores, and pharmacies.
She says proper masking is an effective line of defense against the multitude of illnesses now circulating. Other experts feel health leaders haven't been direct enough about wearing masks, flip-flopping on whether it's a personal choice or recommended.
I feel that without a stronger messaging and a clearer, more direct messaging from our provincial bodies, that any message that comes across is falling on deaf ears.
Dix and Provincial Health Officer Dr. Bonnie Henry have focused on the importance of vaccinations, and Dr. Wolak says they are vital, along with masks.
It feels like it's dropping masks by the wayside and it's not keeping them in parallel.
Dix says he wears his mask in indoor public spaces and encourages others to do the same, but it's not an official government recommendation. Meanwhile, the new emergency operations centers will be open for the next 6 weeks, allowing for a more coordinated response as hospitals brace for more patients. Joel Ballard, CBC News, Coquitlam.
Police in Coquitlam are warning youth and parents of a rise in sextortion cases. They say crimes like these are becoming more and more common. Police say sextortion cases involving young people have increased 150% across Canada between December 2021 and May of last year. It usually begins as a supposed friendship, but evolves into sharing intimate photos and videos. That's when the perpetrators, posing as friends, threaten to leak the material to the victim's family and friends unless they hand over money or other kinds of payment. Mounties are urging parents and guardians to get involved in their children's online activities.
Be open about online behavior. Put social devices that are connected to the internet in open spaces, so a kitchen, a living room, and keep it there. Don't let them go into the child's bedroom. Another one is monitor your child's online activity and even search their name using popular search engines on the internet.
Police said the targets are usually young people of all genders between 12 and 18 years old. They encourage kids who have been victimized to tell a trusted adult who can help them contact police. The trial for the man accused of killing 13-year-old Burnaby teenager Marissa Shen has been delayed for a 5th time. Ibrahim Ali has been charged with first-degree murder. Shen was last seen leaving her apartment building from across from Burnaby Central Park in July 2017. Her body was later found in those woods. Ali was arrested in Burnaby. He's a Syrian refugee with no previous criminal record. The Crown says a new date for jury selection and trial has not been finalized. The Canadian government has reached an agreement in principle to settle a class action lawsuit with Indigenous survivors forced to attend boarding homes for nearly 40 years. The federally run program saw tens of thousands of Indigenous young people placed in non-Indigenous boarding homes. The CBC's Wamish Hamilton spoke with one of the class action lawsuit plaintiffs about the policy's destructive legacy.
It is an emotional day for Reg Percival.
I thought about my parents. My dad died a week before I got removed.
He was taken from his family in First Nation at age 13, but he didn't go to residential school. Instead, Percival was one of 40,000 Indigenous children forced to go through the Indian boarding home program.
It not only removed me from my family, but I never got to see my mom and dad's brothers and sisters. I never got to see my own brothers and sisters. So all of my aunties and uncles, my grandmother on my mom's side, she passed away while I was down here, but I never made it home for a funeral. And today, it still bothers me.
Percival lived in several boarding homes for a total of 5 years. He says boarding home students suffered the same as those in residential school.
Many times I got made fun of, or I had stuff thrown at me, or got spat on in classrooms, and the teachers ridiculing me, just calling me a dumb Indian, and probably going to end up like your parents on welfare. They never met my parents. And those were the kind of comments that we heard. But it wasn't only me.
Percival is a plaintiff in a lawsuit against the federal government for his experience in the program. This week, the federal government announced that it had reached an agreement in principle to settle the lawsuit. Percival immediately thought about who he missed the most during his 5 years in the program.
I wished my mom and dad were there, and I wished they were the ones that brought me up.
The final settlements journey may take a year to work out final details and get approval from the federal court. Reg Percival once cried for the family, culture, and home the program estranged him from. Now, though, his tears are moving them within his grasp.
I tell myself crying is part of the healing. Yeah. You got to do it. Don't be ashamed of it.
Wamish Hamilton, CBC News, Vancouver.
It is a somber day for workers in our province. The BC Building Trades Council and loved ones marked the anniversary of the Bentall IV tragedy in downtown Vancouver.
Today we remember those 4 men, Gunther Kovro, Brian Stevenson, Donald Davis, and Euro Mitranen. We remember them, and we remember those that they left behind. Because no death on the job happens in isolation. The pain and loss radiates outward like ripples.
42 years ago, 4 construction workers did not return home. They fell to their deaths when their fly form on the Bentall IV tower collapsed. Since then, over 1,000 construction workers in BC have been killed due to workplace trauma or disease. WorkSafe says in 2021, 30 construction workers died. That's 1 person every 12 days. The Trades Council says construction workers deserve the highest safety standards. $50 million. That is how much the RCMP says it has spent policing pipeline and logging standoffs in BC. For the first time, CBC News has access to the costs incurred by the Community Industry Response Group. The RCMP squad is charged with policing resistance to resource extraction in our province. Since 2017, they've spent nearly $50 million in enforcing injunctions obtained by petroleum and forestry sectors. Critics say the CIRG received a blank check with little oversight from governments. It may sound like a flight of fancy, but for prison guards in the Fraser Valley, it is all too real. For the first time in recent memory, a pigeon was busted with drugs inside a BC correctional centre. Rihanna Schmunk has more on the attempted airborne delivery.
Pigeons, big city birds, war heroes, and occasional drug smugglers.
It's a curveball for sure.
Staff busted a pigeon carrying a little package in one of the yards at Pacific Institution in Abbotsford last December.
It was noticed by staff because it was odd to see a bird with something tied to it. From my understanding, though, it was tied to it in a similar fashion as like a little backpack.
After a good amount of time, corrections officers caught the pigeon. It had about 30 grams of crystal meth.
It's definitely scary with the fact that it was crystal meth that was found on the bird because, you know, that causes a whole lot of problems.
Pigeons have been used to smuggle drugs for nearly a century. But it's rare in BC.
That's the first time in my career I've ever heard or seen that, for sure. I guess it's a bit of a reality check for us that the creativity that people are going to use to try and smuggle drugs and other contraband into the institution is multifaceted.
Homing pigeons are known for their ability to navigate long distances in order to fly back home to their home lofts. And they can carry about 15% of their body weight. A few dozen ounces doesn't sound like much, but the 30 grams on this bird would be worth at least a few $1,000s. And in theory, experts say it would be possible for an inmate to train a pigeon to recognize a prison as its home loft. Someone else could then come take the bird away, load up its cargo, and release it to fly back home to the prison. But that work could take months. Correctional Services Canada is investigating, but wouldn't provide further details. The pigeon in question was released back to the street. Rihanna Schmunk, CBC News, Vancouver.
A blind BC woman is taking on her city government over what she alleges is discrimination. The Maple Ridge resident says city infrastructure is inaccessible for many members of the disabled community. As John Hernandez shows us, her lawyer says the human rights case could be precedent-setting.
It looks almost like the blind people don't have a voice in this town.
Maria Kovacs has lived in her Maple Ridge neighborhood for more than 3 decades, but over the last 10 years, she says she's noticed some unfortunate changes.
The whole area here, it's done in a way that I'm not able to independently move around here.
This bus stop near her church now has a bike lane that merges onto the sidewalk. Kovacs, who is completely blind, says she can't tell if she's walking into bicycle traffic.
I was coming from the grocery store. When I got out of the bus, the bike was very close to the bus stop and hit me on the back.
And this intersection near one of her favorite parks is now a roundabout.
The traffic here is running in a circle, and it does not give me a line of direction, which I always take my cues from.
Out of fear for her safety, she won't visit either of these spots alone.
All of this, it's becoming, a nightmare.
Kovacs filed a complaint against the city in 2018, alleging the building of this infrastructure is a violation of her human rights because it limits her independence.
The city's construction of these intersections in a way that makes them inaccessible to people with visual impairment like Maria is a form of discrimination.
The city declined comment to CBC News, but it has responded to her human rights file, saying these sites are up to transportation standards and meet the needs of the visually impaired. The case is still being heard, with the Canadian National Institute for the Blind now intervening. A victory could force the city to make costly changes to these areas.
We're hoping it's going to send a message to other cities that if they build their infrastructure in a way that's not accessible to people with disabilities, they could pay a price for that.
Final hearings are set for later this month before the tribunal makes a decision that could transform these streets. John Hernandez, CBC News, Maple Ridge.
Many Canadian tourists remain barricaded in their hotels in a western Mexican state tonight. The streets are still not safe after a drug gang staged running gun battles with law enforcement. Several cities exploded in violence yesterday after the son of a drug kingpin was arrested. Yvette Brennan now on the carnage and the aftermath.
Gunfire, flames, chaos as a crackdown on a drug cartel spilled into the streets throughout Sinaloa Thursday.
It is quite worrying, to be honest. I have never seen this kind of violence, and I have been covering drug trafficking in Mexico for about 10 years.
It began early on Thursday with the capture of Ovidio the Mouse Guzman, the son of drug lord El Chapo in Culiacan, the base for the Sinaloa cartel. The cartel responded, opening fire on troops in the streets and aircraft at the international airport. Even a civilian passenger plane was sprayed with gunfire. In this video posted on social media, you can see people hitting the floor, trying to make themselves as small as possible. By the end of the day, 10 security officers and 19 suspected cartel members were dead. The smoke is clearing, but a climate of fear remains.
Just to let you know how bad this is. One of my friends has a 2-year-old son. They had nothing in the fridge. They couldn't eat yesterday because they couldn't get out to the street.
Today, roads remained blocked. Many flights are still cancelled. Canadians in Mexico have been warned to shelter in place. Pascal Guillon of Vancouver has been coming here for years. His bus tour plans may be on hold, but he says he'll keep flying south, despite the risk of violence.
We have no plan to change our habits. We'll probably keep on coming here, unless things were to deteriorate, of course.
But for now, a lot of his fellow Canadians just want to get home and back to normal. Yvette Brand, CBC News, Vancouver.
Back in this province, dozens of dogs have been seized from a home in Mission. The BC SPCA says they were neglected and kept in poor conditions. The society says staff removed 63 dogs from the property. The individual involved claims they were running a rescue organization. And this isn't the first time the agency has checked out the place. 20 dogs are still left there. The agency is only allowed to remove animals that are in distress.
And I'm sure her heart may have been in the right place, but you know, you can only do so much if you've only got limited amounts of people helping you to take care of 80-something dogs. It's not realistic to make sure that all their needs are being met.
The dogs that were removed have since been examined by a veterinarian and will be cared for by the SPCA while that investigation goes on. Even though she's vowed to stop it, Surrey Mayor Brenda Locke is now warning a transition from the Surrey RCMP to a city police force could come with a major tax increase. But opponents are pushing back and publicly questioning the accuracy of her claim. Locke alleges Surrey residents could be looking at a one-time tax boost of 55% over existing taxes to recover the cost of the transition. A city staff report estimated the city would save $235 million over 5 years if that transition to a city force is stopped. Councillors from the Surrey First Party are claiming Locke's claim nothing more than a scare tactic. But Locke is standing her ground.
We know from our staff that there is significant cost to the Surrey Police Service, and when we extrapolated the numbers, they come to 55%.
And there is so much concern about the numbers. There are 40 assumptions in the financial report that the city has sent to the province, and there are other reports floating out there, and the numbers just don't add up yet. Why she would do this, I have no idea. I think it's fear-mongering, and she shouldn't have done it.
Anna says there should be an independent review of the costs around the police transition. That final decision is now in the hands of Public Safety Minister Mike Farnworth. He's expected to make a choice early this year. Heads up for drivers heading to and from the North Shore tonight and later tonight. 2 southbound lanes of the Ironworkers Memorial Bridge will be closed from 9 p.m. to 6 a.m. tomorrow morning. The province warns drivers to expect overnight delays as crews repair a pothole on the bridge deck. That steel plate, which has been placed there to protect repairs, will remain throughout the weekend. The government says further overnight closures may be necessary. Northern California is bracing for the next storm system, which could be severe while still coping with the damage from the one earlier this week. At least 2 people are dead and tens of thousands without power when the day began. The soil there is saturated and another 150 millimeters of rain could be on the way. That's prompting fears of flash flooding and mudslides. Authorities are urging people to prepare for the worst and to stay off the roads. Slightly different, but a little stormy here. Meteorologist Johanna Wagstaffe joins us with the forecast. It's hoods up so far, Joanne.
It's hoods up tonight, yes. Things are just getting started across Metro Vancouver. And interestingly,
The rain and the gusty winds that we'll see overnight and through tomorrow morning, this is the top end of the same system hitting California with its latest round through the next 24 hours. This isn't how the day started, though. Let me take you through the time lapse. It was a cloudy but dry start to our Friday. You can see those clouds racing across the inlet. The rain sort of held off until late morning hours, and then it was really just sort of spits and spots through the day. The real bands of rain coming as we speak. And if I can take you to the radar, you can see just beginning to fill in now. And get ready if you are downtown and towards the Tri-Cities, this steadier rain is just knocking on your door. So if you were thinking about taking the dog out, maybe just delay for a little bit, but it is going to be a soggier next couple of hours and through Saturday morning. There's the center of the low that's also directing the bulk of the atmospheric river down towards California. So we're just getting the swirling upper sections of that low. But it is going to come with some gusty winds, and it's sort of sneaking up on you tonight. YVR right now reporting some gusts to 30 kilometers per hour from the southeast. But Dan, I think we could see gusts to 40 plus overnight and tomorrow morning. So just a special weather statement for the island. Nothing for us, but heads up. Things could be blowing around tomorrow morning, but I'll take you through the rest of what will be a soggy, breezy weekend coming up.
Okay, thanks very much, Joe.
You're welcome.
You can now include more plastic products in your blue bin. The province's recycling program is being expanded. The increase, which comes into effect today, means you can now put plastic cups, plates and bowls, plastic cutlery, straws and food containers, even aluminum foil in your bin. Drop-off recycling depots will also now accept plastic sandwich and freezer bags, as well as shrink wrap and plastic carryout bags. You can see a detailed list of the items now being accepted and where on recyclebc.ca/new items. Move to increase recycling comes amid new numbers that show Metro Vancouver has failed to meet its own targets around waste diversion. The region had hoped to hit a recycling rate of 80% by 2020, but it fell short, hitting 64%. Still, staff say that is well above the Canadian average.
There's still more work to be done. And I think beyond recycling, there needs to be an increased focus on circular economy, reuse, and repair. And so that's one of our focuses for 2023.
Story says in order to do just that, the region will be supporting more repair cafes, for example, when people can come and learn how to fix broken things or have them repaired by someone else. A temporary truce of sorts. In time for Orthodox Christmas, Russia pauses military operations, while Ukrainians call it hypocrisy. Next. And thank you for watching our commercial-free live stream. Good to have you here tonight. A group of high school exchange students from Colombia recently had a chance to try curling for the first time. And for some, the hardest part was the sweeping.
I thought the ice wouldn't be a little less slippery, maybe. But yeah, it's my first time trying like curling. Well, it is fun. I thought it could be a little more easy, yeah. Trying to sweep is more like like in home, you just clean your, I don't know, maybe your room. It was something like that, but harder, yeah. It was difficult. My first attempt, I didn't do it, I was just only holding it. But then the second and the third, it was a little bit better. Yeah, but I think if I do it right now, I could make it, to the home.
It's my first time. I almost didn't know this sport exists at all. I knew some people shoot at rocks, but I didn't know it was a sport at all. I think it was just a penalty for hockey or something like that, I don't know. At the beginning, I fell down, but after a few attempts, I could throw the rock all the way.
I mean, it's easier than I thought. It looked really difficult, but it's really fun. Also a really cold place. You kind of skate. Yeah, I like skating. So it's fun when you kind of go through the ice and you feel a bit free. It's easier than you think though, but don't get too comfortable too soon because you kind of have to run in ice and you don't want to fall.
Being from the country where they come from, they may or may not ever try this again, but the fact is they're able to try it today. They're smiling, they're happy, and that's really what matters. Why we want to do it is to involve as many people, many diverse groups, for all the right reasons to come out and enjoy it.
In Washington, D.C., a political logjam of epic proportions seems to be near a breaking point. House representatives will soon gather to vote for the 14th time this week on who will fill the powerful role of Speaker. But even if this impasse ends tonight, it has paved the way for a rough road. Paul Hunter has more on the turns in this drawn-out drama.
In a chamber that for days had transfixed Americans with scenes of nail-biting political angst and infighting, finally, on the face of Republican Kevin McCarthy, more than a little bit of relief. He'd caught a break. One by one, fellow Republicans who'd blocked McCarthy's path to the speakership came on side. Not all of them. Florida's Matt Gaetz, for example, staying put as a so-called never Kevin. But it seems enough moved over to McCarthy to do the trick.
It just reminds me of what my father always told me. It's not how you start, it's how you finish. And now we have to finish for the American public.
Republicans had waited days to get to this point, the longest such wait in more than a century, while McCarthy supporters and opponents tried to arm twist, bargain, and compromise a way forward. Says McCarthy, Republicans emerge strengthened.
See, this is the great part. Because it took this long, now we learned how to govern. So now we'll be able to get the job done.
Critics see it as just the opposite. The battling underlines the party is split. Now with bitterness for the hardliners who'd held McCarthy and the party hostage all week.
And there's a group of members right now that are watching and what they're doing to the Congress and probably aren't going to be very happy with them and aren't going to be very easy to work with over the next 2 years.
Paul Hunter reporting tonight. A ceasefire ordered by Russian President Vladimir Putin to mark Orthodox Christmas is now in effect in Ukraine. But Ukrainian officials accuse Russia of breaking that temporary truce and opening fire in several areas. As Briar Stewart tells us, air raid sirens sounded today again in Kyiv and other cities.
As Ukrainian soldiers gathered for a special Orthodox Christmas service, some put their faith in the power of prayer, but none in Russia's supposed ceasefire. I think this ceasefire is like always the usual bullshit, said one soldier. What ceasefire? Probably they need to get some respite. Russia said its troops would observe a 36-hour ceasefire to mark the holy holiday. Ukraine rejected that overture and warned its residents to stay away from church services as they could be targeted. Not long after it supposedly came into effect, air raid sirens sounded across the country, sending people into shelters, including those in traditional holiday dress. Closer to the front line, there was little comfort. The eastern Ukrainian city of Kramatorsk was rocked by explosions in the hours before the ceasefire deadline. I personally feel fear, said one woman. The Ukrainian authorities in Kherson released this footage showing the aftermath of an attack on a fire station, which they say happened early Friday. Officials say one rescue worker was killed. Russia's Ministry of Defense claimed the country was honoring its own ceasefire and accused Ukraine of continuing to fight, which the country had vowed to keep doing.
We need 365 days of ceasefire a year. It should be a peace.
Abbas Galyamov used to write speeches for President Putin, and now he's one of his biggest critics. He sees this as a failed attempt to reassert control.
So when you are trying to set the agenda and nobody is following your agenda, you are looking like a loser. Nobody respects what you're telling. Nobody is paying attention to what you're telling.
Russia claims its ceasefire will last until Saturday evening, but along the front lines, the Ukrainian army says nothing has changed. Their positions are under attack, but they still gather together to try and celebrate the holiday and toast what they hope will be victory in the year ahead. Briar Stewart, CBC News, London.
In China, the government is easing up on more COVID-19 public health measures. The government is easing up on those measures. It plans to scrap a number of COVID rules on air travel that have been in place since the start of the pandemic. This comes days before China ended quarantine requirements for people visiting the country. Beijing is also boosting at-home rapid antigen test kits. A remarkable recovery. An NFL player is on the mend after collapsing mid-game. His heart had stopped. The latest on Damar Hamlin is next.
A special ceremony will be held tonight at the NHL All-Star Game in Vancouver. It's a ceremony to honor Willie O'Ree. The left-winger from New Brunswick only scored 4 goals in his short career, but as Ian Hanamansing explains, his legacy lives on.
How you doing? Good. He is one of the pioneers of hockey, but don't be surprised if you don't recognize him. For more than 30 years, Willie O'Ree was not much more than a footnote in hockey's history. But look at him now. What's it like getting this kind of recognition now?
Well, it really feels great. It really does.
O'Ree was a rarity in so many ways. He grew up in Fredericton, one of the very few players from New Brunswick to make it to the NHL. He could only see with one eye after getting hit with a puck in junior hockey. And of course, when he stepped on the ice on January 18th, 1958, he became the first black player in the NHL. O'Ree said he yearned for race not to be an issue, but he says about a third of the players in the league never let him forget.
When I broke in, this went on every game. I mean, there were racial remarks to me every game, and there was nothing done about it. And I just felt, hey, I'm out here to do a job. Let these guys, if these guys want to, lower themselves and use racial remarks. I think possibly they were possibly trying to get my goat to taunt me to see if I would drop the gloves and go with them or whatever.
After virtually ignoring him for decades, all of a sudden the NHL has discovered Willie O'Ree and his story, hoping his charm and his newfound stardom will impress and inspire young hockey players. What kind of appeal does he have for you?
Well, I just have respect for anyone who plays hockey and the whole National Hockey League in general, and I think being the first black player, that's a big step and a good thing for everybody.
This weekend, the NHL announced it's created a brand new job for Willie O'Ree to try to encourage kids from diverse ethnic backgrounds to get involved in hockey in Canada and the United States. This comes just a few months after 2 NHL players received stiff suspensions from the league for hurling racial epithets at black players. What a difference 40 years makes. Back then, Willie O'Ree sometimes felt like he was all alone, enduring endless racial insults from players on the ice and people in the stands. He never imagined it would end up like this. Ian Hanamansing, CBC News, Vancouver.
We're sharing really important information with the public, and I feel like this is exactly what our job is, especially as the public broadcaster, especially in morning radio. That's incredibly important.
Hockey fans across the country are basking in the glow of another World Junior title after Team Canada's overtime win in last night's final. Matt Cullen has more on how it all unfolded.
Joshua walks in. Well, it's a gold medal game that will not soon be forgotten. The Canadians and the Czechs certainly lived up to the hype. The Canadians hoping for a bit of revenge after the Czechs beat them on the opening day of the tournament in Boxing Day. And it certainly got off to a great start for the Canadians. In the first period, Dylan Guenther rips home a shot on the power play. That gets the fans on their feet. He was loaned to Team Canada by his NHL club, the Arizona Coyotes. That certainly paid off. Canada led for most of this hockey game 2-0 in the third period, but the Czechs would not make it that easy. In fact, it became very tense. The Czechs fight back. Yuri Kulich brings the Czech Republic back to within a goal. And then less than a minute later, the Czech Republic gets a fortunate bounce. Jakub Kus getting credit. That means we go to overtime, 3-on-3, and that's where the magic happened. Brant Clark starts this play. Joshua Waugh sets up Guenther for his second goal of the game. It's a golden goal. Halifax erupts in joy. So does the rest of the country. Canada wins its second gold medal in a row at the World Junior Hockey Championship.
It was amazing!
It's just incredible experience with my boy. Yay!
Well, all the talk in the tournament has been about the 17-year-old phenom Connor Bedard from North Vancouver, BC. He was named the youngest ever tournament MVP. He shattered records and rewrote his name in the tournament history book, becoming the top-scoring Canadian in terms of goals and points, and some terrific moments, a great pass in this championship game for the gold medal, and also a terrific overtime winner that stands as one of the greatest goals in World Juniors history. That was against Slovakia in overtime in the quarterfinal. So today the Canadians leave Halifax. They'll go back to the respective clubs in junior hockey and in the NHL, but they will be bringing a valuable gold medal with them and also a memory that will last a lifetime. Matt Cullen, CBC News, Toronto.
Buffalo Bills player Damar Hamlin is speaking tonight. He's off a ventilator after his terrifying on-field collapse at Monday's game. Cameron McIntosh has more on Hamlin's remarkable recovery.
Hands in the shape of a heart, a gesture Damar Hamlin's Buffalo Bills teammates know him well for. To their relief, they saw it again.
To see that boy's face, to see him smile, see him go like this in the camera, it was everything.
Hamlin, now off a breathing tube and talking, FaceTimed the Bills' morning meeting from his hospital bed.
He made the heart symbol probably more than anything.
On Monday, Hamlin in white, wearing number 3, made this tackle in a game versus Cincinnati on the NFL's signature broadcast, Monday Night Football. Shortly after, the 24-year-old went into cardiac arrest. The New York Times got tape of the medical personnel's call.
Come on, bring everybody. We need the airway doctor, everybody. Bring the cot with the medics.
All of it playing out before stunned players and millions watching on TV.
My heart broke, and I was terrified for his family.
That a man can go through this on a Monday night, and by Friday, he's talking, all the tubes are out. It's just amazing.
Hamlin remains in critical condition in the Cincinnati hospital. Doctors say he's doing well.
The best outcome would be back to who he was before this all happened.
The game was canceled. That has playoff implications, putting 3 teams, including Buffalo, in contention this weekend to qualify for the AFC Championship, which the NFL may move to a neutral site because Buffalo played one less game. Michael Ogello is a Buffalo sports reporter.
All the focus on that game was home field advantage and all this stuff related to the Bills and their playoff pursuit, and that really dropped by the wayside very quickly.
Man, we got our boy, man. You know what I'm saying? That's all that matters. We got our boy.
Across the league, teams are marking their fields wearing number 3 crests in support of Hamlin's recovery as the NFL plays its final regular season games, including Buffalo, where players say a win is secondary to Hamlin's recovery. Cameron McIntosh, CBC News, Winnipeg.
Today we have weather reports at our fingertips 24/7. We have up-to-the-minute weather warnings, courtesy of Johanna and others. But weather forecasts have changed a lot over the decades. Perhaps you remember when they used to draw them on maps. Well, CBC Edmonton's meteorologist Christy Kleimenhage is taking a look at where we've been and where weather is going in the future.
Some of you may remember when your weather forecast looked a little something like this. Now, when I became a TV forecaster 10 years ago, it looked a little more like this. But how did we get from this to this? Let's take a trip back in time. People have been trying to understand and predict the weather for millennia, but it wasn't until the 19th century that we really began to see anything that looks like modern forecasting, developing weather charts and transmitting weather reports by telegraph. As for getting that information out to the public, Canada got its first TV weatherman in 1952 when Percy Saltzman hit the airwaves with his chalk and blackboard.
And that area of action is even greater than this and more violent. You have a very tightly wound up storm that covers all of Western Canada.
With no computers or internet, the graphics you saw were a product of the meteorologist's artistry on chalkboard or plexiglass with a grease marker. The 1960s and 70s brought magnets and the occasional radar image, but then technology really started to change in a hurry in the 1980s. And former CBC meteorologist Claire Martin started just in time to see it firsthand.
We used to get forecast model data on what was called Moldfax. It was huge sheets of paper that were wet because they'd been printed like an old newspaper printing press, highly flammable, probably not very good for your health. And we would draw maps on that. The gentleman that worked before me had still a marker, a pen, and a big, huge map. I was slightly more sort of advanced, technologically speaking, and we had automatic weather stations put around Edmonton, which was just massive. I could tell that the temperature in Sherwood Park was different from St. Albert, which was huge.
In the 90s, computerized graphics made their way to the forefront.
It's akin to having a black and white TV with like 4 channels, which I grew up with, my friend, to satellite TV, all the colors, pick and choose, streaming when you want it.
With computer models and graphics, we could see weather as it happened, visualize low-pressure systems, see the downdrafts for thunderstorms, and where hail was forming. And of course, more information also makes for a more accurate forecast, especially when it comes to the next 24 hours. I've already used TV graphics that are a little more modern like these for 10 years, but where will weather reporting go next? We've already got holograms, virtual reality, and interactive 3D green screens, so the sky really is the limit. And that makes some of the veterans a little jealous.
I'd like to be around for that. If I get a second chance at a second life, I'd love to do that.
And hey, it sure beats delivering weather by Morse code. Christy Kleimenhage, CBC News, Edmonton.
Joe, I have to ask, how good are you with Morse code on a forecast, like a low-pressure system? I don't know what it is.
My answer to that is 3 dashes, 4 dots.
Hold on, you're going too fast.
More.
1 sec.
Yeah. That's 7 dashes, 3 dots. Yeah, I think I need a lot more than a couple minutes to get through the forecast. But how cool is that? And you know
Amazing.
what, Dan? My first job in the Weather Center in Toronto was actually printing those charts for Claire Martin.
No way.
They were
on
paper.
The giant flammable rolls?
Not the flammable rolls,
Okay,
the paper ones. Not that old, Dan. Yeah.
My bad.
Yeah, paper, and I might have to stick around for the 3D holodeck
Well, you
weather.
darn well better. We need all the help we can get.
Yeah, exactly. And I'll work on my Morse code. I'll do it in plain English until then. It's raining. It's still raining across the south coast, and we are looking at rain ramping up as the latest system moves in from the southeast. Let me take you through the forecast because this system is bringing some snow. There it is in purple with my high-tech graphics there. Fresh snow for the locals overnight, sort of a 10-plus centimeter story. We get that second round moving quite quickly in for Sunday. So 2 rounds through the weekend, not much of a break in between. Temperatures are fairly seasonal at around 7 or 8 and breezy. I think we'll see the peak of the winds in Metro Vancouver tomorrow morning, especially if you're by the water, 40-kilometer-per-hour gusts. If you're on the island, special weather statement for 70-kilometer-per-hour winds. And that's the story for Sunshine Coast as well. Some sunshine tomorrow, though, across the interior, -1 and through Williams Lake. Lots of sunshine up in the northeast. and a -12 up in the northwest, 4 in through Prince Rupert, and you've got a pretty gusty next 24 hours. Cranbrook, look for a few flakes flying in your neck of the woods through your Saturday. But it is a pretty soggy forecast for us on the south coast. Here's our 7-day look ahead. We had some mild couple of days. We're sort of back down to seasonal. So it's wet and breezy today and tomorrow. Some steadier rain moving in for Monday. At this point, it looks like perhaps a break Tuesday afternoon through Wednesday, but these storms, this parade of storms, if you will, may shift. So don't hang your hat on the timing of that Wednesday break just yet. Looks like between tonight and Friday night, Metro Vancouver could pick up around 100 millimeters of rain. We're sort of still in our 4th wettest month of the year. So at least it's spread out, and we're not seeing the end of the fire hose of these systems like California is. But yes, Dan, get ready for a breezy, wet weekend, and that trend will continue next week.
There you go. Good time to stay inside, practice the old Morse code.
That's my plan for this weekend.
Crazy time. Thanks, Joe.
Yes, you're welcome.
It's a new CBC film that takes you from the shores of Howe Sound into the mountaintops. The health benefits of bathing in nature, even virtually. Stick around.
Here on Grand Manan, at the Grand Manan Whale and Seabird Research Station, I am a senior scientist. So that's a nice buried female. Our main focus is lobsters, water temperature, and then we're also very interested, and this ties into the temperature stuff, in the zooplankton community in the Bay of Fundy, because zooplankton is the bottom of the food chain. There's some emerging evidence coming that suggests that larval lobsters might feed on zooplankton too. So what we've been trying to do with these water temperature data, not only figuring out where female lobsters are going, but also connecting water temperature in various parts of the year to the health of the zooplankton community, because they're also sensitive to temperature, and because everything relies on zooplankton, temperature is key for all of that. So we've been trying to put those pieces together for a number of years too. Sample temperature every 15 minutes. Lobsters don't do anything really fast, so we don't need, a more fine scale temperature movement for them. And then the thing about these is that we have to get the tags back in order to get the data. And when we first started this project, I think I put 50 out in the first year, and I thought if we get one back, oh my God, I will be over the moon. And I think we got 17 that year. So we put out, I can look at how many, but it's over 120 now. And I think we have something like 35 data records, which is phenomenal. What did I say, 126? So now we're going to take a quick, just dimensions of the massive eggs that she has. Try to be gentle with these guys. These are her little swimmerettes, and so the eggs have she makes kind of like a glue that sticks them to these swimmerettes, and then she's constantly having to make sure that they're aerated so that they're getting oxygen. And she's going to carry these for basically a whole year. She spawned these in the summer sometime. She'll carry them around until the following summer, and then they'll hatch. I think it's important for all of us to understand what's happening in marine ecosystems in particular for a couple of reasons. One, preserving ecosystems is important. We know preserving biodiversity is important. We also have to think about the communities that live here and rely on the health of the ecosystem for sustainable fisheries to keep the communities going.
Land Back is a CBC original podcast where we uncover land theft in Canada and look at how Indigenous people are taking it all back.
And that's what empowered nations and empowered people to just literally steal land.
This is a consequence of your actions.
And it's time to give land back.
Land Back is out now on CBC Listen or wherever you get your podcasts.
It is the new year, so perhaps you're trying to turn over a new leaf, get out into nature a bit more. The rain might be swamping your plans, but CBC has put together a video that takes you into nature without having to leave your desktop. This is a look at CBC's Creator Content's new launch this week. It is called At Katsum. That's the Squamish word for paddling north. It takes you on a journey from the shorelines of Howe Sound up into the mountains overlooking our city. It's entirely unnarrated, just the wonders of our coast captured in a day-long journey. And it's meant to unhook you from the everyday. The video is now on our website, and you can look at it anytime you want. For more on this, we're now joined by Katerina Stepanova. She's a PhD candidate at SFU and a cognitive scientist. You're studying how we can use technology to connect ourselves with the world around us. First of all, how beneficial is forest immersion? What does it actually do to our bodies?
It's extremely beneficial. It supports our mental and physiological health. We can see lots of evidence showing how immersing yourself in nature can reduce the sympathetic activity of your nervous system, increase your parasympathetic activity, which means that you have those restorative benefits of being able to deal with stress better and faster. As well, we can see the decrease of inflammatory markers, meaning that your actual health is improving, and it supports your immune system.
All sorts of benefits.
Yeah.
So less stress, less inflammation. What about for those who would be concerned that perhaps this virtual world is not as beneficial as actually taking a walk in the woods? What do you say to them?
I think that it is true that it is more beneficial to actually take a walk in the woods, but there is lots of benefits that come with technology. First of all, it can allow people who don't have access to those experiences to have them, or at the time when they cannot have them. And the other thing is also that I find in my own research that was a little bit surprising, that even for people who can have this access, having those virtual experiences reminds them of those past moments and help them reconnect with those past experiences to achieve the same benefits, and then also feel more encouraged to go actually out into the woods or the forest or mountains and have those moments again.
So it sort of dives back into the memories they have of that first experience.
Yeah, and it motivates them more to have more of those experiences.
What about this feeling of awe that you're studying? What does that mean?
The feeling of awe is this emotion that we have. It's also sometimes called sublime. It's considered to be potentially one of the reasons why nature provides all of those benefits that I have been describing. This is the moment or experience that we have when we find ourselves in the presence of something that's so much greater than we are, and we kind of feel small in comparison. And we have this overpowering, profound emotion coming with it. We can feel goosebumps. We receive the same kind of benefits that I was describing. We feel stronger meaning of life in those moments.
And on a grander scale, perhaps on a larger scale, lastly, you're looking at how astronauts and this what you call an overview feeling. What is that?
Yeah, so the overview effect is kind of a potentially quintessential way of experiencing a very profound awe. That's something that astronauts often describe, that when they look at Earth from out in space and they kind of have this profound moment overpowered by emotions when they see how beautiful our planet is, but also how fragile it is and how we're all united as species on this planet, and we need to kind of come together and protect our planet.
Katerina Stepanova, we appreciate your research. It's fascinating, and thanks for your time.
Thank you so much for having me.
Coming up, a mom wanted to protect her bicycle-loving kids from head injuries. She couldn't find the right helmet, though, so she made her own. You'll want to see this.
I'm Amy Bell, and here's what's in your CBC Vancouver inbox.
Enjoy groundbreaking contemporary works of theatre, dance, music, and multimedia at the annual Push International Performing Arts Festival, January 19th to February 5th. And never miss a special programming series, event, or contest. Subscribe to CBC Vancouver's e-newsletter at cbc.ca/Vancouver inbox and keep connected with us.
Sikh parents can have a hard time finding helmets that fit their children who wear religious head coverings. Q1 Brampton mom who came up with a solution. As Talia Ricci reports, the occupational therapist saw the importance of protecting kids from head injuries.
Tina Singh says the idea to create a new helmet came from her experience as a mom.
My kids keep their hair, and so anytime I went to go put a bike helmet on them when they were going out to ride or learning to ride for the first time, nothing would fit them properly. Some of the things we did with what we had are, sizing up our helmets, which led them to not fit properly, or trying to hollow out the foam on the inside.
So Singh took matters into her own hands. She worked for over 2 years on a new design. The Sikh helmet is now in production.
But basically what makes this unique is that it has this dome portion on the top to accommodate your child's hair. So if you look inside, you can see that the helmet itself is curved in order to have it fit in a way where they're still matching all the rules for how a helmet should fit.
Singh says the helmet is certified for use with bikes, inline skates, kick scooters, and skateboards for kids over the age of 5.
Because I'm an occupational therapist and I worked in the area of acquired head injury, I didn't want my kids to ride without a helmet. That's something that's really important to me.
We're looking at innovations, and this is definitely a step in the right direction. It creates more options for Sikh families. The turban is a very important Sikh article of faith, and it covers the uncut hair. So there are many Sikhs that are looking for options when helmet requirements are in place.
And the mother hopes having this option also helps kids feel more seen in sports.
I hope this makes them feel included. I think more than creating a product for Sikh kids is the demonstration of inclusion and diversity and how we develop products and how we look at the people who need to be served.
The creation of this type of helmet is now going to create an inclusive space. It's going to foster belonging. And that's part of the antidote to making sure that people feel like they belong.
So seeing them actually wear it is, it's a beautiful moment for me.
One she hopes is shared with other Sikh parents now too. Talia Ricci, CBC News, Brampton.
Inclusive and creative. Very well done. Thanks for being with us tonight on CBC Vancouver News at 6. You can watch this newscast on CBC Gem, our free app, as well as on Instagram, YouTube, and our website, cbc.ca/BC. Michelle Gassoub will have your next local news at 11 o'clock, right after the National, so please tune in before you turn in. Good night. Enjoy the weekend. Stay safe.